AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. So this stock is up 3x from its lows in March of 2025, and I thought I'd do a video talking about it. So we're going to start off by saying, what does AMD actually do? Because before you invest in a stock, you want to know what it does and what its core business operations are. After that, I'm going to talk about where I think AMD stock price is going in the short term and in the long term. To that, I'm going to tell you about, am I buying, holding, selling my current position? And finally, I will actually show you my current position, which is a £10,000 investment I made back in March of 2025. I'm going to show you what that investment looks like. So we're going to start off with an overview, which is obviously the boring part of the video, but stick with me because it gets good later on. We hear AMD is a semiconductor company. The word semiconductor gets thrown about all the time, but what actually is a semiconductor? Because me personally, I didn't know when I first heard of AMD what a semiconductor is. It just sounds fancy and it sounds all technical. So semiconductors are materials used to make the microchips, the GPUs and CPUs, what we will explain later what they are. And essentially, a semiconductor is a material that conducts electricity a bit. So it sort of conducts electricity. And companies like AMD and NVIDIA, they design this material in certain ways so it conducts more or less electricity for the computer chip. So we have CPUs and GPUs. What a CPU is, it is a central processing unit. What this chip does is it is the brains of the computer. So it can do tasks from moving files, typing, searching on the internet. These are all things controlled by your CPU. So think of it as the brains of the chip world. So on CPUs are these things called cores, and CPUs have 3 or 4 powerful cores. You don't need to know what they do, you just need to know that CPUs have a few cores. Compare this to GPUs, general processing units. GPUs have thousands of mini cores dotted along the semiconductor material. And the reason why they have this is where it gets interesting. GPUs have all these cores for a particular reason. They need to handle thousands of calculations at once, which is what your CPU would struggle with. So GPUs have traditionally been used for graphics. So every pixel on your screen is essentially a number and a calculation, and the GPU in your phone, computer, is projecting these pixels onto your screen. GPUs are now getting especially predominant in the AI space. So to help visualize how GPUs are being used for AI, we've got to think about AI. So AI is different to us. As humans, we think, whereas AI learns from patterns in data. So let's say ChatGPT, for example, it learns from different data sources, whether this be words or images. And what it does with these data sources is it'll take your word or your image and it will turn it into a sequence of numbers. Now, once it's done this, it can perform calculations on those numbers, and then using mathematics can help derive patterns from those numbers to essentially make it smart and answer your questions. To perform all these calculations, it needs all these thousands of little cores which are laying on top of the semiconductor material. Alright, so I'll stop boring you with how computer chips are designed, and I'll talk about what AMD actually does with these. So AMD designs GPUs and CPUs compared to its rivals Intel, who only make or specialize in CPUs, and we've got NVIDIA, who specializes in GPUs. So AMD produces both on a mass scale. So I've got to be careful with when I say AMD produces chips. So AMD doesn't actually manufacture any chips. It just designs them. So it's what we call a fabless company. And what fabless companies do is they outsource their manufacturing to different places. So AMD uses a company called Taiwan Semiconductor Company. And these guys over in Taiwan, they pump out millions and millions of AMD chips, send them to AMD. AMD packages them up and sells them on. So AMD strictly just designs the chips. The beauty of a fabless business model is lower costs, because it doesn't have any expensive infrastructure that is required to manufacture millions and millions of chips. And with these lower costs, it can invest these savings into researching and developing new chips which are more efficient and smarter and better quality. Its rivals follow a similar business model. So NVIDIA doesn't actually manufacture any chips either. And you've got Intel, which does manufacture some chips, but it's moving, like the other two, towards a more fabless business model. So they're following AMD's trend, its rivals. Where do AMD's chips, where do AMD's chips actually go? So if you've ever played a video game or a Xbox game in your life, you've probably used an AMD chip. So gaming PCs, gaming consoles, all of these use AMD chips. So I'm going to run you through my thesis on why this stock is going places. And it all boils down to data centers. So you're probably going to get sick of me saying it. So I was reading this paper by Deloitte the other day, and it was saying that energy demand for data centers is going to 30x increase by 2030, I think it was. This is important. As companies all over the world adopt AI, they need somewhere to store the vast amount of data that AI requires to operate. And these are in data centers. And what AMD does is it produces the microchips that goes into these AI servers that are in each one of these data centers across the world. So on this same paper by Deloitte, they mentioned plans of building a 50,000 acre data center facility in America. And this is just one of the many facilities. And to visualize for my UK audience how big 50,000 acres is, because who the hell knows? It just sounds big, doesn't it? But I thought I'd visualize it and put it over the city of Manchester. So as you can see by the image on the screen, this thing is going to be massive. And this is just one of them. Please just remember, this is one of them. And it's the size of bloody Manchester. So in my opinion, it's not a matter of is there enough demand to keep up the supply. It's if AMD can produce enough chips to keep up with the incredible demand for these data centers. Data centers, believe it or not, aren't the main reason why I believe in AMD. They're definitely linked to it, but they're not the main reason. I was reading another article the other day, and it said data centers are going to make up 3% of the power usage of the whole world. So 3% of the whole world's power is just going on AI data centers. And current energy infrastructure, so your nuclear power plants, your renewable energy, current infrastructure is not large enough or efficient enough to keep up with this increase in energy demand because of the rise of data centers. So why does this make me bullish on AMD? Well, the reason is AMD has some of the most energy efficient chips in the entire market. So as you can see by this graphic here, released by AMD themselves, they are doing better than the entire industry at making their chips more energy efficient. They also have very ambitious plans for the future to increase this forward trajectory in the efficiency sector. So currently in 2025, it takes 275 server racks to run a large language model. In 5 years' time, as you can see by this image, they want to get this number down to one server rack to run a whole large language model. I don't even want to do the maths on that, but that's way less than 1% of what their current power out usage is. They're trying to absolutely skyrocket the efficiency of their chips in the future because they know that this is going to be a major selling point compared to their competitors. Right, so based on all this tomfoolery, where do I think AMD is going to go in the short term, mid term and long term? So me personally, I invest on a long term basis, and I always ask myself the question, is this company going to be bigger or smaller in the next 5 years? And I think this one's a no-brainer. It's going to be bigger. The real question is how much bigger. So when I ask myself this question, I like to think of what other people in the industry think about this company. So who better in the industry than OpenAI, the OGs of this industry, the founders of ChatGPT. These guys know what they're on about. And just recently, they struck up a massive partnership with AMD. So we're going to look at what they think. So what this deal consists of is OpenAI agreeing to use AMD chips in return for AMD shares, which leads to a percentage ownership of their company. So to get these shares, there's certain metrics they have to hit to earn AMD's precious shares. So if they hit any of these metrics, AMD will reward them with shares at a price of $0.01. I believe they call it a cent out there, or a dime. The best part of this deal, and the part of this deal that made me cream myself, was if AMD shares reach a value of $600, which is over 2x what we're at now. So we're at 250-ish now. So if AMD shares reach $600, AMD rewards OpenAI with 160 million shares at a price of $0.01, which is equivalent to 10% ownership of the company. What this tells me is OpenAI is bullish as hell on this company. They think this company is going to the absolute moon. So, based on all this, where the hell do I think this stock is going? Let's make some basic assumptions first. So let's assume AMD executes the AI growth, large scale shipments start in 2026 and ramp up significantly into 2027 and 2028. Let's also assume AMD captures a significant proportion of the AI infrastructure market and competitors don't get their hands in there before them. And let's also assume that the market gives a high valuation to high growth sectors like AI. So my short-term outlook on the stock. So this is in the next 12 to 18 months. The deal has been announced and it's starting to come into fruition. AMD are starting to sell their chips to OpenAI. So in the short term, I reckon we could go from $250 to the $350 range. So about a 40 to 60% increase. We get to the midterm range, so 2 to 3 years. AMD starts to dominate the AI infrastructure segment. So it starts to capture market share from NVIDIA, Intel, and it becomes a dominant player in the AI infrastructure race. Given this, we'll see AI revenue doubling, tripling, and I see the stock at $600. I see it there in the midterm. In the long term, so 3 to 5 years, OpenAI becomes 10% of the company because it hits that $600 mark. And who knows from there? Who knows? I don't. What I know is I'm pretty sure I could bet a decent amount of money on AMD being more than a $250 stock in 5 years' time. But this isn't financial advice, so do your own due diligence. So what am I going to do based on all this information? See, I've already invested quite heavily into AMD over the past year or so, less than a year. So I'm not going to put big chunks in at once, but what I'm going to do is it's going to be a weekly investment. It's going to be 50, 100 quid a week for the next few years probably. So, and I'm not selling one share. Before the same AMD OpenAI deal, I was tempted to cash out a bit because obviously I was up a bit from my March investment, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But now, I'm not fucking leaving. Right guys, so I'll stop edging you like I have for the past 20 minutes. So I own 147 AMD shares, which actually doesn't sound like that much, at an average price of 77 British pounds, which is $100-ish, and I'm up 17,700 quid. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'll show you my activity on the buy-in. Right, so here is my buying activity. As you can see in March, when it was absolutely in the gutter, Trump was announcing new tariffs every day. China was gonna have no exports. I don't know what I'm saying, but as you can see, we've got 400, 500, 250. Every few days I was buying while it was low, and then it big, as you can see, $116 here. So it was in the gutter during this time. June, 127. I'm still buying, but I'm buying less as it goes up because I don't actually know why, to be fair. I wasn't as bullish as I am now on this stock. And as you can see, I'm just putting in 60 odd quid a week and trying to build my position up for the next year or two. We'll see how the cookie crumbles. So there you have it. There's my £29,000 position. Wait, I swear I said 27 a minute ago. Oh no, I was up 17. So there is my £29,000 AMD position with £13,000 initial investment. So as you can see, if you pick the right individual stock, it can really pay off. And obviously there's an element of luck to it and an element of risk. But at my youthful age, I'm happy taking this risk. So thank you all for watching. Do your own research before investing in the stock, but I will be investing in it. Please like the video, let me know where you think AMD stock is going, and subscribe. Goodbye.